we need a better ruling class, so to speak. That is, we need better ideas in our office holders about foreign policy. How do we get that? And in particular, what resources are there in the American political tradition, in our history of foreign policy ideas, to which we could return seeking wisdom?
Well, the first answer, of course, is that you can't perform wisdom transplants. but
as every teacher knows, yes.
But the second question has a rich answer, because we do have a rich foreign policy tradition of success. The founders' foreign policy was a model of realism with a lowercase r, i.e., very, very well tied to reality. It was based on the seeking of a proper end, namely peace, and on the basic distinction between our business and others' business, and the determination to guard our business by all possible means, including war. War was taken seriously, and that is really that. If you have these fundamentals, then you can go on to other things. But if you begin to conflate our business with those of others, as John Quincy Adams warned, there is no end. There is no end to the things and to the not simply the foreign operations, but the mental deviations into which you will be drawn. How quickly you will lose sight of what is really important to you. And what is really important to us is to remain Americans, to remain as blessedly distinct from the rest of the world as we always were.
And that healthy tradition, which didn't mean we performed magnificently in all of our wars.
No, not at all.
But what about, when does that tradition
end
or become compromised?
It begins to become compromised intellectually in the 1880s by the growth of an easy hubris. In the leading books of the 1880s, including Woodrow Wilson and certainly Josiah Strong's Our Country, envisaged a very powerful America who could basically do anything at all and do it peacefully, do it without cost. Why? Because we were so obviously great. Then, a few years later, part of that tradition, which had seen America as the example of the world, morphed into the belief that the world would follow us, and that we could actually go out and teach the world, and the world would be our eager pupil, and that we need have no power backing that up. Theodore Roosevelt, who was a progressive in many domestic matters, was a staunch Washingtonian as regards foreign policy. He always was for an excess of power over demands, for speaking more softly than the size of the stick would warrant.
Right. Yes, the opposite of some of our current policies.
Precisely. And he chastised the others as those who coupled the unbridled tongue with the unready hand.
Now, so
which he called peace with insult.
Is this
it doesn't work?
Is our war on terror now essentially a kind of Wilsonian enterprise in your view?
It is Wilsonian. It is peace with insult, because especially after our experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States is not going to, thankfully, try to nation build again. I mean, that's a good thing. But nevertheless, our demands on the rest of the world appear not to have diminished. And Barack Obama's expectations that not just peoples, but the very seas would would obey his administration's priorities. This can only get us into trouble. I mean, orthodoxy in foreign policy says that you ought to be asking for a lot less than you can compel, not the other way around. To do the other way around spells bankruptcy. Excess of commitment over capacity is bankruptcy, whether in foreign policy or in financial affairs.
But making the world safe for democracy, Wilson's slogan in World War I, is still something different from making the world democratic, isn't it? Which seems to be was the Bush administration's goal.
It's only slightly less crazy. Look.
Well, what's wrong with making the world safe for democracy?
No, wait a minute. It is a legitimate objective to make the world safe for American democracy. To make the world safe for other democracies is quite something else. After all, not all democracies are good. There's this notion that democracies are necessarily good. We're about to find out in Egypt, just as we found out in the Palestinian territories, that democracy simply reflects the demos. I mean, this is, you don't have to be terribly learned to figure that one out.
Right.
But we have forgotten. We have what Herman Kahn used to call educated incapacity about such things. The incapacity to see things which are perfectly obvious to people who are not educated.
Now, so to put it crudely, what would the Washingtonian policy be for us going forward in the war on terrorism and also for Iran?
Well, with regard to Iran, should we conclude that, and it's by no means obvious, but should we conclude that, as everyone seems to say, that an Iranian nuclear weapons is a mortal danger to us, should we conclude that, then there is one course of action which is open to us. It is not an easy course of action, and it does not involve actually bombing Iran. It is simply to exploit our overwhelming economic power by declaring a secondary boycott and embargo on everything Iranian. That is to say, we would not trade, not only with Iran in any way, shape, or form, and we would not trade with anyone who trades with Iran in any way, shape, or form, or anyone who trades with anyone who does. So, look, this would cause enormous heartburn all over the world. We would be denounced everywhere, but no one, not even Russia, could afford to go against us. Nobody.
Nobody. So this was sort of economic suffocation.
And it would happen quickly. I've written elsewhere and explained elsewhere in my books that economic sanctions truly applied are far more deadly than atom bombs. In fact, they have killed more people than
but such a boycott would be an act of war, would it not?
Of course it is. Yeah. It would WAR. It would, in the dictionary meaning of the term.
Yes.
And that war would be on a Washingtonian would make that war on our behalf for redress of certain grievances. Number one, the taking of the U.S. Embassy. And number two, the whatever aid and comfort that the Iranians have given to those who killed Americans in Iraq. I mean, these were acts of war by Iraq, and they should properly be answered by war, serious war, not a strike by Iran. A strike by us.
Right. No, but acts of war by Iran.
Acts of war by Iran against the United States of America.
Right.
We should properly be answered by a real, honest-to-goodness war in the dictionary meaning of the term. Should we choose to do it, that would be the way to do it.
That's bracing.
Yes, I intend it to be.
Thank you, Angelo Codevilla.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.